Hello and welcome to this video, and here with me today is Jack Jennings, one of my favourite guitar players on the planet. This is the first time we've met, isn't it, Jack? We've been friends for a while now.
Yeah, it's been about a year of lots of phone calls and never-ending conversations about music, art and culture and spirituality even.
And the Mahavishnu Orchestra and Shakti and Indian music mixed with jazz. And this guy here has really, been exploring the outer limits of guitar playing in terms of mixing Indian music and rock music and going right deep into Indian classical music. And I'm a massive fan of what he's doing. I'm really chuffed to be able to give him a spotlight on this channel, and I hope you'll all go and check out all his links in his channel. He's got an incredible channel, and it's all going to be down there. It's all down there actually. So Jack, do you want to just tell us about how you started playing guitar and what you originally into?
Yeah, sure. I mean, first of all, I just want to say that I'm so pleased that I've got to know you and that I discovered your YouTube channel, and I was just really blown away by the level of debate and how you really take things on, and then to find out that you're such an incredible drummer. And
have you found that out today, have you?
Well, I found that out in person, but when I first heard you talking about things, I thought, wow, this guy's just knows so much about music. And then when I saw videos of you playing, I thought, Jesus Christ, and really amazing. And you kept it kind of quiet as well when we had so many conversations, and then just gradually you started to drop into things like, oh well, once I won a poll, sort of like best progressive rock drummer in Europe, and I was like,
it was a tiny part of you.
Really? So yeah, I'm so happy to be here. But in terms of playing guitar, I started playing when I was 10, and the way that I started playing was with that Oasis songbook that I think a lot of people have learned to play with, and that's probably not what you were expecting me to say.
No, I didn't expect that. I don't know if we were allowed to have Oasis.
No.
Are we allowed to have Oasis on this channel?
It's a tough one. Yeah. I mean, I grew up. My first musical experience was I used to stand in front of the class and sing Beatles songs along with the tape player, so maybe that's a little bit more respectable. And then
I think Oasis started like that as well.
Yeah, Oasis started like too. Yeah, so common beginnings. But from the beginning, I mean, I just remember my dad would point out things like something would come on the radio, be like, oh look, that's Jimi Hendrix, or Jimi Hendrix would pop up like on Wayne's World or something like that, and whenever it came through, I couldn't really believe what I was hearing. It just seemed to really mean something.
Because Hendrix is a really big influence for you.
Yeah, he's the number one influence, and it doesn't really matter what music I'm playing, just the way that my hand is geared on the guitar and everything about my playing, I feel I just owe everything to him. And I wouldn't have started playing Indian classical music, I don't think, if I'd had that starting with Hendrix and then discovering McLaughlin and then discovering Indian classical music.
So that was your route through, was through Hendrix, then Mahavishnu, McLaughlin, Shakti.
Yeah, and then the Indian classical. And I had a good introduction to that because my mother's a yoga teacher actually, and she would go to India to study. So I always had this idea of India being a very important place with this amazing culture. And my mother brought back from India one time. She went when I was 17, and I really wanted to go with her, but she said, well, you're still in college, I was in music college, and you better just stick to that for now, but maybe you can go in a year or two. But she brought back a CD of Zakir Hussain tabla solo and an old cassette of Ravi Shankar, and when I heard that music, it sounded to me like it was the sort of future of the guitar. I thought if you could expand the guitar as far as possible in that direction, then it would end up sounding more like what Ravi Shankar was doing. Because I could hear I could hear the string bending, I could hear the kind of fast linear phrases that sort of, and the way that the sympathetic strings work on the sitar create this kind of amazing texture, which is a bit like the feedback that Jimi would get through the guitar. So that there's the main sound, but then there's this kind of shimmering, like sort of textural sound that's coming from the feedback or from the sympathetic strings, which are basically the same thing, because it's the vibration in the room is then making the string vibrate again, or making a different string on the sitar vibrate in harmony with that. So it just felt to me like that was a really powerful destination. And John McLaughlin, I feel like with Hendrix, he's my sort of like my god of music, but with John McLaughlin, I feel like he sort of shows the path that you can actually tread, because with Jimi it was like he was here and then he was gone, and you never got to see what he would have done, whereas with John you can see how he progressed through his life and the different choices that he made, and how he came up against all kinds of different challenges in his career and how he navigated through. So he gives me the biggest sense of having faith in walking a path that's kind of unusual.
Yeah. It's so funny that the fact that we've connected so quickly, you know, through YouTube and the internet, and then when you tell your story, it's exactly like mine. That my dad said, I was into like Deep Purple and White Snake, and my dad said, well, if you're into all that, he said, you need to go and check out. He said two what? He said King Crimson, who I never got to hear. It was just as a name, and Jimi Hendrix, and then about 2 weeks later on the TV they had sort of history of rock and roll, and Hendrix was on that. And then of course my mom's Indian. Right. And so I've got Indian relatives, and so there was always this Indian culture coming from them, and she had Indian classical albums. So from a young age I knew about Indian music, and I had the same thing. But for me, what fascinated me was the timings and the rhythms, you know, the way that things drop on the one, and that sort of cyclical thing, you know, and I could see that with Hendrix, and I could see with Coltrane, and then you know, I discovered John McLaughlin, and it's the same. Very similar story, you know. So what sort of bands did you start playing in? Obviously, did you have this interest from a very young age in the Indian classical music, or were you playing like rock guitar and? Yeah,
I mean, I was just complete Jimi Hendrix devotee really through, you know, the age of 10, 11, and then I was into Metallica for a bit as well, because actually I was really lucky when I was in school. I got to hang out with guys who were like 4 or 5 years older than me, and they were in like a Metallica kind of covers band, and they let me come and listen to the band rehearsals, and they were really playing together, you know, all the stuff. So I feel like I got to experience a really good level of musicianship, and there's a lot. It's really good to help musicians aspire, I think, if they get into something like Metallica, or something which has kind of got, you know, all those different technical aspects. But Frank Zappa was a huge thing in my teens, and I had loads and loads of his records. I've still got them all. But John McLaughlin and Shakti and Indian music, I discovered that all around the same time, like literally just at 16, kind of finishing school. And then it felt like I associate John McLaughlin and Mahavishnu Orchestra with like coming of age and like thinking about becoming an adult. So that's how I identify with that music, and Miles Davis and Coltrane and all of that stuff. But the first band I was in was really kind of pushed me a lot, because I was like Jimi Hendrix orientated player, very blues orientated, and the first band I was in was a sort of a very weird sort of avant-garde prog rock band with the guys in college, and they were into King Crimson and Van de Graaff Generator and all of that stuff, and they kind of like would laugh at me and shame me a little bit sometimes with like the sort of solos. I could do it, and if I did it at a level that was really creative and really fresh and really raw, then it was like it passed. But if I did it in a way that wasn't like really cutting edge and really kind of wild, then it was like, dude, you can't do that. You know, this isn't what this band is about. You know, they would laugh and say, oh, what's that? You sound like Brian May, or like, oh, you sound like you're a blues player. You know, so because you were talking in one of your videos the other day about how prog being like a sort of a reaction to English musicians that maybe thought that they could play blues, and to the English aesthetic, it's like, well, that's not us. You know, we're something else. So these guys I was playing with, they were really into that. That I didn't realise it until you talked about it. I thought, oh no, that's what was going on. So I think it was a good challenge, because I felt like I had to be really individualistic and really kind of wild. And I used to be much more of a kind of sound sculptor type guitar player, like you were talking about a lot of your favourite progressive rock. I was really into that, and it was all weird noises, and that was great. I really loved that. But then coming out of that band, I had some other things which were more kind of Mahavishnu focused. But I found that my passion and my way of playing with all the crazy wah pedal and the distortion and the feedback and all of the crazy sounds, it felt like my energy was kind of being like drained away, and I couldn't do that anymore. I couldn't kind of like will myself to play like that, and I wanted to do Indian classical music.
I mean, me and Jack have actually
away.
We've been jamming today for the first time, and, and after reading so much about how, so many musicians have had to try and work out how to intertwine Western music, rock music and jazz with Indian classical music. And it was the same thing. As soon as I started playing with you today, I was like, oh my God, I'm playing this. It's like explosive rock energy. Even though I've studied the timings and everything, I realised that I'm gonna have to pull down. And you've sort of gone, oh my God, I'm gonna have to come up, because it's chaotic, isn't it?
Right.
I mean, that's the big.
You're working at totally different levels. Because I want to play more with more visceral energy. I want to get back into that.
Yeah.
Like I've just bought this wah pedal that arrived yesterday. It's the first time I've had my foot on a wah pedal for 10 years. But I really want to play more.
But before we get to that, let's get to what you have been studying. Because the one thing with you that's really interesting is that I know so many musicians who have an interest in Indian classical music. And they've gone through that thing. For us on our side, I think for a lot of us when we heard Shakti. It was like, oh my God, this is proper Indian classical music, which it isn't really.
It isn't really, but you get a sense of it.
Yeah, so I imagine you're going through that. What made you make the jump into really studying it at the level? What happened and what did you start to learn? Just tell us about that journey.
Well, I think that it's something that I go back over, and I think, why didn't I try to go further with like the kind of fusion rock stuff that I was doing? We had a nice little record label in Bristol that wanted to do our album. There were lots of good things happening, but to me, to be honest, I didn't feel that I could be happy living in a city, and I didn't feel I could be happy playing gigs in the kind of local venues anymore. I mean, I've been doing that since I was young, so by the time I was sort of 21, 22, I already felt like I'd been doing that for about 6-7 years, and musically I needed to do something that was more delicate, that I could play in a very refined, sort of gentle way, because I feel like I've got this, I like to play kind of fiery and all that, but there's another part of me which is just very sort of sentimental, kind of gentle soul, and that I want to play really gentle things. And
so with that want, how did you get? Because what happened to you that you would actually find out about this stuff? I mean, because you've really studied this to a high level. So how did that come about?
Well, I had a friend in Bristol who knew a sitar player, and I went to study with him, and he had studied with a really fantastic professor of the sitar in Varanasi called Aronoff Mishra. So he introduced me to playing sitar, but it was interesting because I was kind of all revved up and like sort of fancy fast guitar player, and he was playing the sitar, but he wasn't about the fast stuff or the rhythmic stuff. He was all about the alap, which is all like.
When I used to play Bhangra bands, and there was a big Bhangra band called The Lap.
Oh right,
they're one of the any Bhangra fans out there will go, yes, Andy's right. There's a big Bhangra band called The Lap.
Because I wouldn't associate Alap with Bhangra, because the Alap is the unmetered sort of free time improvisation at the beginning of the rag.
ALAAP, is that the word?
It can be AAP or just AP.
Yeah.
And there's a joke in Indian music that it can stand for as long as possible.
Yeah.
Because
So that's the
alap is.
That's the bit at the beginning of a.
Yeah, it's the beginning of the recital.
Yeah.
And it's all about the pure essence of the rag coming through and the lyrical quality.
Yeah.
And whenever I was playing, he would just tell me, just cut it in half. I mean, even what I played there, he would be like, yeah, that's okay, but just cut the time in half. Really, really slow it down. And I just became, and also through hearing so much Miles. I mean, if you listen to Miles and he's playing super slow and just really, really intimate, and you get into that, then you can listen to alap, and you can really sense the atmosphere. So I got really drawn into that, but there was always a combination of different things. I was still kind of trying to do like a fusion of Indian and Western music, and I was practicing the sitar, and I was trying to do classical guitar, and I felt like I had loads of things on my plate. And again, it was hard for me. I tried to form bands with different people, but I couldn't find the right people, to be honest, in the sort of southwest area. But then at some stage I decided, actually, I don't think I'm a very good sitar player. I'm a terrible classical guitar player. The electric guitar stuff is good, but I don't seem to be able to make it work.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do Indian classical on the electric guitar, and I'm only going to do that. And then I started mixing with different Indian classical musicians just by like going to concert and then approaching them afterwards and saying, hi, I play Indian classical music on the guitar. And it was literally like, turn up with your guitar and like, let me show you.
Yeah.
And literally just kneel down on the floor with no amplifier and just play. And to my surprise, the musicians were really intrigued, and they wanted to play concerts with me. So then I ended up being able to do collaborations with really fantastic musicians.
And you worked with the top, haven't you? You know, some of the greatest classical musicians in the world.
Well, Manish Pingle is undoubtedly one of the best Indian slide guitar players. He's really fantastic, and Gurdain Riot is one of the top tabla players in the UK, and he's very respected in India as well. He's got a very good reputation. And then they introduced me to Rupa Panesar, who's an amazing sitar player of the UK, and she's introduced me to Shakir Khan, who's son of Shahid Pervez. So I can't believe it, actually. I can't believe that I'm actually like that close to musicians of that lineage and that connection, and that they're so welcoming to me as well with the guitar. But because I played the sitar, I understand what they're doing, so I can look at them and I know exactly what note they're playing. I know what technique they're using, so I can kind of just directly translate that onto the guitar just by watching what they're doing and listening to what they're doing. So for the last sort of 5 years, I've literally only done that. I've done nothing else. And
the thing is what you've carved out, no one else is actually doing, because there's Indian classical guitarists, but they play horizontally with a large action and they sort of slide.
You're doing slide guys, and
what about your bizarre tuning here? You know, what's going on here?
Well, basically, I love standard tuning. I think standard tuning is standard for a reason. Yeah. So what I use is the standard tuning on like the top 4 strings. So that's a
bit like a banjo.
Is it? Is it a bit like
I think so.
That's right. Then you've got high strings. And then all I've done is I've taken away the low 2 strings and put very thin gauge E strings and then tuned to D. Because the first time I played concert with Manish Pingle and Gurdain Riot, and we had the proper setup and we're playing through a PA, and you kind of get used to what does it really sound like when you're playing with tabla and Indian slide guitar through a PA, and you've got an electric guitar. What works and what doesn't work. And I tell you, anything below that pitch just did not work. It sounded so out of place and too overpowering, and my amp was too loud on stage. I had a kind of Fender Twin. It was too loud. So I thought, actually, no, I need my little Roland amp. I need to change what I'm doing with the sound, and I need these Chikari strings, because when we move into the different parts of the recital, where we're doing all this like all of these.
So you've in
rhythms.
effect got 3Ds, haven't you?
Yeah, I've got
There's
3Ds,
there,
yeah.
and so the guitar's tuned in D,
Yeah,
and then your standard tunings.
Yeah. So it's just
I can see how that makes sense.
Yeah.
Actually,
it's just this case of saying, right, I'm not going to worry about playing in different keys. I'm not going to worry about playing chords. I'm not going to worry about jazz and inversions and stuff. I'm just going to play like an Indian classical musician. I'm just going to pick a key, stay in that key, tune my guitar in that way, and just think about rag structures and only think about that. Because I've been studying Indian classical music since a sort of fairly young age, but it was only when I said, no, I actually need to only do this and completely follow, and I've done things like for years, like hardly ever playing on the top two strings, because all I do is play on.
And you play horizontally as well, which I think is fascinating.
Yeah, but playing just on, because if you're a sitar player, that's actually what you're doing, and it completely changes your way of thinking and your way of phrasing. So something like. Something that you'd normally get. It makes you play and think very differently. So now I'm trying to actually expand outwards again, but that period of only doing that one thing, I think, is completely essential to absorb a different tradition and actually become fluid with that.
That's fascinating. I think we're getting near to the end of this video, and I think we'll wind up. Just before you go, tell them a little bit about your YouTube. You must go and check Jack's YouTube out, because not only is there tons of footage of you playing this stuff with incredible musicians, but there's also loads of educational stuff. So tell them a little bit about what you do on there and all that sort of thing.
The guitar channel is called Indian Classical Guitar Academy, and I've taken to making lessons and making courses to teach people how to play this stuff, and it also helps me to kind of compile all of the material that I have that my guru's given me. So I've got so much material to work on, so it helps me to kind of work through it and document it all, and then put it into a container, then other people can start to gradually pick things up as well. So yeah, there's collaboration performances on there. There's different sort of talks about things. Andy's on a few of the videos as well. There's
some really big talks about the Mahavishnu.
Yeah.
Some of the deepest talks.
Yeah.
Anybody who watches this channel, you want to go over to Jack's channel, because we've really gone deep into this sort of more spiritual end of the Mahavishnu.
McLaughlin. So. Yeah, absolutely. That was a lot of fun. So yeah, I'm working on more collaboration performances, and there's a group that's coming together as well, the Attuned Quartet. We have one collaboration video out. We've got some more material coming through which has more fusion elements. Like, I'm still using this tuning system, but I'm doing things like, so you're using different kind of harmony, but so I'm using like a more Indian scale, but I'm starting to introduce kind of chords and different rhythm parts for the other Indian classical musicians to kind of play their melody over. So I'm kind of starting to try to sit more halfway. So yeah, there's some interesting stuff coming up.
That's brilliant. Well, I really think that Jack, this is what all musicians need to do, is they need to find their own individual way and go for it. There's so many people say go and check this guitarist out, and they're fantastic technically, but I've heard it a million times before. They're just doing it really well, but you're doing something absolutely fascinating. So please check Jack's channel out and what he's doing. We're about to do a Shakti video now. We're going to go through Shakti, so you'll see that on the channel. But anyway, I'd like to thank you, Jack, for coming.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
thanks so much.
Lovely to see you, mate. And I'm going to switch off now. And that's it. I'm not going to say like and subscribe and go on my page. Oh, I did anyway.